Burnout is not a character flaw. It's not laziness, it's not lack of grit, and it's certainly not because you can't handle the pressure. It's biology. And ironically, the people most vulnerable to burnout are usually the strongest ones in the room. High performers don't quit. They override, they suppress fatigue, they suppress stress, and they suppress warning signals. And they do all that until the body starts suppressing output. That's when things start feeling different. You're still capable, still intelligent, still driven, but something's off. Energy doesn't feel clean, motivation isn't automatic, decisions feel heavier, and your patience is thinner. That's not weakness. That's accumulated physiological stress. Let's break this down to what's actually happening. When stress becomes chronic, your autonomic nervous system shifts into persistent sympathetic dominance. This means your fight or flight system is constantly running in the background. Cortisol secretion becomes elevated or erratic. In the early stages, cortisol may run high. Over time, the rhythm flattens. The morning surge that should help you wake up becomes blunted. Evening levels may remain elevated, which impairs deep sleep. Your sleep architecture changes, slow wave sleep declines, REM becomes fragmented, your heart variability drops, indicating reduced parasympathetic tone and diminished recovery capacity. Inflammatory cytokines begin to rise quietly in the background, but not enough to land you in the hospital, just enough to impair signaling. And here's where it cascades. Cortisol rhythm dysregulation impairs thyroid conversion. T4 is converted less efficiently into active T3. More of it may be shunted toward reverse T3, which is an inactive form that blocks receptor sites. Now, your metabolic rate slows at the tissue level, even if your TSH looks normal. Cortisol and inflammation also impair insulin sensitivity. Blood sugar becomes more volatile, you spike higher, you crash harder, dopamine signaling becomes unstable. Now, dopamine is not just about pleasure. It's about drive, motivation, goal pursuit, anticipation. When dopamine tone drops, effort feels heavier, tasks feel more draining. You don't lose intelligence, you lose sharpness. So this is you. If you wake up tired, even after 7 or 8 hours in bed, if you need caffeine to feel human, or your edge feels dulled but your workload hasn't changed, this is not a personality defect. Your stress response has just been left on too long. Burnout is what happens when the stress response never returns to baseline. The system was designed for an acute activation followed by recovery. You face a threat, cortisol rises, adrenaline increases, you respond, then the system downshifts. But modern executives, they rarely downshift. Emails at 10 p.m., news at 11, scrolling at midnight, early alarms, fast gym sessions fueled by caffeine, back-to-back meetings. It's constant cognitive demand. Your body does not differentiate between a tiger and a quarterly earnings call. It reads demand. And demand, without recovery, becomes cumulative load. Now here's the identity part. If you are the person who prides yourself on pushing through, who sees rest as a weakness and believes you can outwork biology, you are the exact profile that burns out the hardest because you override signals longer than most. You ignore declining HRV, you ignore rising resting heart rate, you ignore shallow sleep, you ignore mood shifts, you ignore post-meal crashes, and you ignore it until performance drops enough that you can't ignore it anymore. Burnout is not collapse from fragility. It is collapse from prolonged suppression. Now, let's talk about reversing it. First, you regulate the nervous system, not with motivational slogans, but with physiological inputs that tell your body it's safe. Consistent sleep and wake times to rebuild circadian rhythm, morning light exposure within 30 minutes of waking to anchor cortisol properly. If you can't get enough sunlight because you're awake earlier than sunrise, get some immediate bright light, not dim light or your phone. Bright light and get 5 to 10 minutes outside when the sun does actually come up. Protein within the first meal to stabilize blood sugar and blunt stress hormones, reducing late night blue light to support melatonin production. Breathing protocols that activate vagal tone, longer exhales, nasal breathing, slow cadence. These are not soft practices. They are neurological recalibrations. Second, you stabilize blood sugar. High performers often undereat protein, over-rely on caffeine, and skip structured meals. That combination destabilizes glucose and increases cortisol output. Structured meals with adequate protein and fiber. Reduce the ultra-processed carbohydrates. Eat natural, real food. Matching training intensity to recovery capacity. Burnout recovery is not about crushing yourself harder in the gym. It's about building a body that can tolerate stress again. That means resistance training intelligently, not excessive volume, not endless high intensity intervals layered on top of a stress system. Progressive overload with recovery awareness. Third, you measure instead of guessing. You track waking heart rate, track heart rate variability trends, track morning body temperature as a proxy for metabolic rate. Pay attention to post-meal energy shifts. Monitor sleep depth and consistency. Your biology leaves clues daily. Most people ignore them because they've been taught to wait for disease. Burnout is not fixed by a weekend off. It is not fixed by a vacation if you return to the same stress architecture. It's fixed by rebuilding the systems that regulate energy in the first place. Nervous system tone, thyroid conversion, insulin sensitivity, mitochondrial output, circadian rhythm integrity. That rebuilding process is measurable. It is structured. And here's the most important part. Burnout does not mean you're broken. It means your current stress load exceeds your current regulatory capacity. Increase capacity, regulate load, rebuild intelligently. If you're serious about restoring clean energy, mental sharpness, and stress resilience after burnout, check the link below for free access to my Executive Energy Reset Blueprint, or message me directly and I'll point you in the right direction. Burnout isn't weakness. It's unregulated biology, and biology can be rebuilt. I'll see you all very soon. Take care.